So good evening, welcome. I'm Erica. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm a volunteer with the Gallatin Valley Sentinel, and we are very excited to have you here to have this very important conversation about public safety in our community. Before we get started, we want to establish a few ground rules about how we expect tonight to go. We're all neighbors, so we expect there to be courteous dialogue and that everybody has a nice, open discussion, even though we may not all agree on all the things that are discussed. We ask that you're respectful of other people's questions and that you just listen. Personal attacks, shouting, disrespectful language, or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. I doubt that's going to happen. To ensure everybody has a chance to participate, please limit yourself to one question and be very concise in what you're asking. If we can, also keep the questions relevant to public safety and not veer too far off that path. So let's get started. We want to start by thanking the Gallatin County Republicans for co-hosting this event with us tonight, and especially a big thank you to Calvary Chapel for allowing us to host the event here and for their hospitality. Thank you so much. Before we begin the presentation, we want to share a little bit more about who is the Gallatin Valley Sentinel. What do? We are a volunteer-based nonprofit 501c4 that was created for two purposes. None of us are paid activists. We intend to educate the public on what's happening at the City Commission and in the City of Bozeman. And we also want to put forth a set of solutions that are reasonable, that will benefit the whole community and not just one sector. For 2025, we are focused on a few things. We want to talk about the City Development Code, or the UDC as you may hear about it, the Growth Plan Inter-Neighborhood Council, and both the Bozeman City and Gallatin County Study Commissions. We as a group do not agree with the direction that the City of Bozeman and the county at large are headed in. And that's where we ask you to come in. We're taking the time tonight to ask you to help, to get involved. We are asking for you to be neighbors and to help keep Bozeman from becoming density and infill developer utopia. We know that there are common sense solutions out there to fix some of these issues, and none of them should include destroying your neighborhood in the process. There are a lot of ways to get involved. At the end of our meeting, we will send out an email to everybody that signed up, and if you'd like to volunteer, we will just reply to that email, and we will let you know how to get involved and how to set up an interview with one of the volunteers, and you can volunteer in the capacity that you're comfortable with. One of the things we plan to continue to educate on as an organization is the power of the Neighborhood Council, or the INC, as you may have heard of it. These are advisory board, the Inter-Neighborhood Council is one of the city's advisory boards that meets monthly at City Hall and is intended to facilitate a two-way conversation between the neighborhood and the City Commission, which is great, except Bozeman has grown so quickly and has sprawled out so far that there are so many neighborhoods that have not yet been established, and therefore a lot of voices are lacking at the city level. In addition to the INC, we're focused on educating the public on what can and cannot be achieved in the local government studies, while we provide data-backed solutions for how we can achieve a more representative and efficient form of local government. We are also revamping our website to illustrate clearly what our focus is on and how we intend to achieve them. We consider ourselves new media. On that note, we will be recording tonight's event, and it will be posted to our platform as is. It will not be edited. Nothing can be twisted around. All of the questions that are asked will be very clear for the public to see the spirit in which they were asked and the spirit in which they are answered. We have been asked why the media has not been invited and why we were very careful about who attended tonight's event. And that answer is very simple. We wanted to provide an orderly discussion that was free from intimidation and disruption. And while crime and immigration are not necessarily topics that our group is funded to tackle, we have to have that conversation. We think it's very important. So, that's a little bit about us. This evening's event will feature our esteemed panelists, Bozeman Police Chief Jim Veldkamp and Gallatin County Sheriff Dan Springer. They will be sharing with you their insights on current safety initiatives and respond to your questions about law enforcement, community safety, and the work that's being done to keep Bozeman and Gallatin County a safe place to live and work. They will each give a brief overview, and after their presentations, an overview of what they're each doing. After that, we will open it up to questions from the audience, and then we will also move to some of the questions. We received dozens of them that were submitted prior to the event, and hopefully we can get through them all and not duplicate a lot of them. So I am was not able to memorize their bios, so I'm going to go ahead and read them to you. So I'm going to introduce our panelists for tonight. Jim Veldkamp is the Chief of Police for the Bozeman Police Department. He began his career in public service when he joined the department in 1999. Aside from his current position, he has worked as a patrol officer, a drug detective with the Missouri River Drug Task Force, a patrol sergeant, the support services captain, the patrol captain, and the deputy chief. During his time at the department, he has had the opportunity to be involved in a wide variety of projects focused on connecting the department and community, upgrading technology, improving the overall well-being of officers and staff, and addressing the rapid growth of the city and the department. Prior to working with the department, Jim worked in marketing after obtaining a bachelor's degree in business administration. Jim is a graduate of the Montana Law Enforcement Academy, the Montana Executive Leadership Institute, the FBI National Academy, and is a member of the Montana Association of Chiefs of Police and the International Association of Chiefs of Police. He's done a lot. Jim has lived most of his life in Gallatin Valley and enjoys his time with his family and all of the outdoor recreation that our area provides. Next, Sheriff Dan Springer. He is from the Gallatin County Sheriff's Department and has served Gallatin County for over 28 years, becoming sheriff in January of 2021. His law enforcement career began in 1994 as a seasonal ranger in Yellowstone National Park before joining the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office in 1996. Over the years, he has held multiple roles, including patrol deputy, K-9 deputy, school resource officer, detective, SWAT team commander, drug force task commander, and undersheriff. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in education from Montana State University and graduated from the FBI National Academy in 2011. He has coached in the community for 30 years and has been married to his wife for 23 years and built a life here in Gallatin County with their 3 children. Thank you both so much for being here tonight. As a reminder, we are going to hold questions until after they have each given their presentations, and we will go ahead and get started with Chief Veldkamp. Are you ready to come up?
Thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with all of you. We're often asked how often we speak to the community, who we speak to. I can tell you it's a very wide variety of folks. If we're asked, we try to come and speak. My goal is to just share information about what's going on in the community, answer questions. Hopefully they're questions that I have the information to feed back to you. And just build relationships, and that's why we're here today. So, to be honest, we didn't get a real clear idea of how much of a presentation we were to give at the beginning, so I thought I would just kind of give an overall view of the Bozeman Police Department. What I often find when I speak to groups, I may ask something like, how many officers do you think we have in the city of Bozeman? Some people say 15, and I've had like 250. So what that tells me is people really don't have a scale or a scope about what it takes to keep something like the city of Bozeman safe. So I try to usually start at the beginning and just kind of give an overview of the department, some projects we're working on, and we'll go from there. I did have a presentation I believe they could put up for me. Those are just pretty pictures. You can go to the next one. All right, so like I just mentioned, staffing levels. Often asked how many people we have. So today we are authorized for 76 sworn police officers. We did just get 4 of those authorized this past year by the City Commission. We got 5 authorized last year. So between vacancies we had before that, the difficult time we're all having in law enforcement recruiting and retaining staff, and new positions, we're down several beneath that. We do have a bunch of offers out right now, go through a significant background process, but it's a chore to get to our fully staffed authorized number. So we have 76 sworn, and the other part of that says staff. The reason I write staff is we are following the trend that a lot of law enforcement agencies are doing these days, but we're trying to use unsworn staff members to perform duties that don't require necessarily a sworn police officer or sheriff's deputy. When I started in 1999, we had 1 admin person in the office, and I think we had like 1.5 animal control and 1.5 parking officers, so one of them split duties. Today we're up to 17 or 18 staff members. So these are everything from an administrative assistant for the deputy chief and I, to information specialists that do a lot of the putting cases together in the office with the goal of not burdening that on the sworn officers. These staff take all the information reports, they review and categorize body cam footage, they put it all together in a nice digital package, and they ship it off to the appropriate prosecutor. We have animal control officers, we have a crash investigator. You may have seen his vehicle around town. He's a civilian crash investigator that's all he does is goes to crashes. We can tell you he is the officer's favorite staff member, because it means they don't have to go to crashes. In the 40 hours that he has worked over the last few years, there have been times he has responded single-handedly to almost half the crashes in town. And that's keeping in mind that he doesn't work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Outside of that, we have some other people in our department, in our building, that work for another department that do code compliance, parking, and urban camping. We have communications people. We just have a wide variety: digital evidence technician, physical evidence technician, so like a crime scene investigator, a wide variety of other duties. It's often easier to get those positions. It's cheaper to fill those positions. We can draw different types of people. There may be somebody who's interested in helping or working within law enforcement, but doesn't necessarily want to be a police officer. So it really actually helps us. It saves the taxpayers money. It helps us better train a specific person for a specific duty. Beyond that, we're located over here at the Public Safety Center. Moving into that building back in the summer of 2022 was a significant game changer for us. Just having a safe place to come to work, a place where we could grow appropriately with the community. It was a purpose-built facility rather than an old Catholic high school where we literally rented a corner. It was just a great change in what it felt like to come to work. We have training rooms there, we have fitness area for the firefighters and the police officers and other staff that work there. It's been a very good facility for us. The downside of that building is the fact that we're kind of on a corner of town. If you've driven Huffine lately, you've probably noticed town is moving that way. So we are kind of in the opposite corner of town. At some point, I imagine we'll be trying to get a footprint back on that side of town. We currently do have a substation, a very small office at the new fire station on Kagi. That's just a place where officers can go while they're on patrol, hang out there for a bit, write a report, and meet with a citizen. We hope to continue that method somehow. How are we organized? So there's myself, and the deputy chief, who's actually here tonight with me. Beneath that, we have 3 captains. They each oversee a different division, which is patrol, detectives, and support services. Support services is everything that doesn't fit under detectives or patrol. So they do the hiring, the purchasing, the training, oversee a lot of our community events, a lot of our staff members, a wide variety of duties there. Budget this year was approximately $15 million. Most of that is personnel. As you can imagine, we do have costs related to vehicles and technology, but it's a relatively small portion. The majority just comes from having to pay good people to be out on the street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what makes up the vast majority of our budget. Go to the next slide. So, talk a little bit about calls and crimes. So, every year we get approximately 45,000 to 50,000 calls for service. So what that means is either an officer has initiated some kind of event or a member of the community has called us to report something. So that's a combination of what we call proactive, that we initiated, or reactive, where the community called us. What we try to remind our people is that every time a community member calls us, it's because they trust that we're going to be able to do something to fix their problem. So if the calls start going down and people aren't calling us, is that what that means? So we try to remember that every time somebody calls us, they expect us to be able to do something about their problem. So the combination of those two is about 45 to 50,000. That means anything from, it could be the first report of a homicide, or it could be a patrol check where an officer stopped out at night and checked the doors in Calvary Chapel to make sure they were locked. It could be a variety of things. Of those 45 to 50,000 calls per year, about 10% result in a full case. So that means the officer has to do something beyond just documenting that they stopped by here and they move on. It means they arrested somebody. It means they have an investigation to complete, something where they have to write a full written report. Out of those cases, some are misdemeanors and some are felonies. So even a case might include something like somebody broke into your car and stole your sunglasses. Or, again, it could be a homicide. So what it makes up can vary greatly. So those, of course, are misdemeanors and felonies. What we're seeing as Bozeman grows, you kind of expect this, the calls for service are slowly trending up, but we're seeing the reactive calls are trending up, which you'd expect with more people in our community. And as that happens, the content and the total officer hours it takes to investigate those calls and cases continues to go up, and that means there's less time to be proactive in the community. So what I want to be able to do is continue adding staff so that we can continue being proactive in the community and not just reactive. I get asked frequently, why did officers see someone run a red light? There was a patrol car at 19th and Main. Everybody else saw somebody run a red light and they didn't do anything. Well, I can tell you they saw it as well. But there's probably a call on their screen that they're trying to get to. They could be bringing somebody to the detention center. There could be a domestic that a neighbor reported down the street. Sounds verbal right now, hasn't turned physical, so it's not worth hitting their top lights and getting there, but they need to get there soon. So they are prioritizing the calls that are popping up on their screen. And that, at times, means they don't have the capacity to stop that car for a red light. I can tell you it's very frustrating to them, too, because what they signed up to do is be the person who can do something about that. And so when they can't, it's very frustrating to them as well. So that's the reactive versus proactive part. I put a little note in the corner that from 2022 to 2023, our felony cases increased quite substantially. You can see that up there. It was at 29%. That means the total requests for prosecution that these staff members, the information specialists, submitted to the Gallatin County Attorney's Office went up that much just in 1 year. It was about 300 in 1 year and 400 the next year. So that's a pretty significant increase in the number of felonies we're seeing, from a little less than one a day to a little more than one a day. So that's kind of a testament to the total number of officer hours and time that it takes to investigate a case. When you're not just doing car break-ins now, you're doing felonies. So that's kind of what we're seeing. And then wrote crimes you see and crimes you don't see. My first half of that is, again, the person that ran the light at 19th and Main. Those are the crimes that people see. Those are the crimes that people want us to do something about. We absolutely do want to do something about that, but there's also a lot of activity going on in the city that your average citizen does not see in a day. You may not see the human trafficking case that we're investigating. You may not see on a daily basis the effects like we do of increased fentanyl use in the community. So my job is to make sure that we're adequately, appropriately addressing all of those desires by the community. And so there's a lot of time and energy that goes into those types of calls and cases that aren't as readily visible as someone running the light at 19th and Main. The good news is this is still a very safe city. What people sometimes conflate is numbers of calls or the busyness. Some people don't like it when I use that word, but the activity that goes on in the city compared to how much crime is in the city. So we have a very low crime rate. And you can see there on the left, I believe that was 2023. There's the 7 major cities in the state of Montana, and we are the one on the right. So we had about 68 crimes per 1,000 people, but those crimes are the more substantial felonies. So we could be an extremely busy city with traffic stops everywhere, call after call after call. Those don't contribute to your crime rate. The crime rate is made up of the homicides, the assaults with a weapon, a lot of the violent crimes, the crimes against people. So we are a busy city. Drive down 19th and you'll see how busy a city this is. But as far as the ratio of those major crimes happening per 1,000 people, it's still relatively low. And you can see it's lower than the other major cities. I do pick on Great Falls sometimes, and their crime rate is 2 to 3 times ours, and our populations are almost the same. On the right there, you can see over the past years, all the way back to 2008, that it is slowly going up. So if the number of crimes per 1,000 was staying exactly the same, as the population goes up, our crime rate should stay exactly the same. So that's not quite happening. We are getting, like I said, busier, more calls, but the number of crimes and violent crimes per 1,000 people is also going up just a little bit every year. I'm also asked sometimes, what does that do to? I've had groups and people try to blame it on one factor, and I can honestly say it's a whole wide variety of factors. I don't see one thing that solely is the contributor towards that. It's little increases across a wide spectrum. All right, what are our challenges? Growth. Never had to prove to somebody that Bozeman is growing. I believe it was the last, let's see, from 2007 to 24, our miles of roadway increased by 44%, and since 2007 it increased by 51%. So you can see how fast we're growing. Changing community. That's probably one of my favorites. I get angry emails from the citizens who say, I'm a 5th generation Gallant Valley native, and I can't believe what has happened to this community over my lifetime. The next email, this happens routinely, will say, I moved here in February of this year, and I can't believe what you've let happen to Bozeman in the time I've lived. This is not the same place it used to be. And it seems like everybody's expectation is that they were the first one to discover Bozeman, and now since then, since they became aware of what it was like, it has changed significantly. So that's a struggle. Everybody moves here because they love how it is here, but then somehow they think portions of it should be like wherever they came from. So I think that's a challenge in and of itself. Expanding expectations. This includes not only the types of calls we respond to, but it includes what is expected of us when we get there. Many years ago, the expectations when I started and Dan started were quite a bit different and lower. People watch TV now, and every case is solved within an hour. We're supposed to have every type of technology available. We're supposed to be able to fix any problem, which is great because that means the community trusts us to fix their problem, but unfortunately it's just not always possible. So that's a big challenge as well. Another one is staffing. I mentioned that already. I don't know of any law enforcement agency that says, we have so many people, we don't know what to do with them. These great candidates are knocking our door down. It's a challenge. For our people, it's a challenge to meet the cost of living here. It's a challenge, again, to meet the community's expectations. This is a tough job. It's stressful. It can be traumatic. And so it's a tough environment to hire in. We find a lot of good candidates, mainly because Bozeman still has that name. Some are moving here for the Bozeman dream, their Montana dream. Half of them, when you ask them why do you want to work for the Bozeman Police Department, their answer has something to do with I like to hunt and fish. Whereas I'm looking for, I want to serve my community. That's a much better answer. There's your pro tip. So we see people come for the Montana dream, realize people here are just like they are elsewhere, and they tend to leave. We also have people that stay a couple years and they just move on to something else. There too, it's tough to pinpoint one factor that's leading to the hiring, the staffing, and retention issues, but we're seeing it across law enforcement. It definitely became tougher about 2020. Great year to become the chief, by the way, when there was so much going on across the country. The industry, not the industry, the job as a career is just seen a lot different than it used to be. Polarized opinions, we get this a lot too. What I have noticed is if here is the center of an issue, if you're just on this side or just on this side of it, you actually have a lot of common ground. But what I've noticed increasingly over the years is if you're on one side or the other side of the issue, you're automatically polarized. So one of my first big, as the chief, I'll say, not the prior years, as the chief, one of my first big examples of that was during COVID. Again, we have to stay not on the side of politics. We have to try to enforce laws. We have to take appropriate behavior. There too, I had people that wanted to meet with me, called me, emailed me, and demanded that I have an officer at the entrance to every restaurant and every store enforcing the mask mandate. I'm counting on, first of all, how many people that would be. And then other people doing the same, wanting to meet with me, saying I better absolutely have no part of that, and then I won't tell you what they called me or said. Yeah. So how do you put those two together and serve a community, keep the community safe with so many different opinions? So that's been a struggle as well. The final one I put on there was, I love using air quotes, police call or not. This is a trend that we're also seeing as well, where we as a community need to determine what is appropriate to have the police department respond to and what should someone else respond to. I've heard it said that law enforcement is the social agency of first resort, meaning we don't know what else to call, let's just call the police. They should know what to do. I have been on calls of leaky toilets in the middle of the night, you name it, right? Don't know who else to call, we're gonna call the police department. That's probably not the best method. So what we have been trying to do, first of all, like I talked about, is increasing the number of staff members who could possibly respond. But we're also doing other things like mental health professionals that now respond to both of our agencies. There's 2 on every day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. They have our CAD, which is our computer-aided dispatching. They have our radio channels. If there's a call they can go help on, they respond. So at times, they actually go by themselves and handle the call so no uniformed officers have to show up, because sometimes that can escalate the situation. Other times, somebody's threatening themselves or someone else with a weapon, we can't send them in, we still have to go. But the goal is, let's render the situation safe, and as soon as possible or practical, we'll try to move out and hand that call over to them. One of the wins lately is that they have, like I said, started taking some calls themselves. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a new number called 988, cleverly because you dial 988. It's a crisis hotline. So it's basically the equivalent of 911, but for a mental health crisis. So that line is now answered by the help center in Bozeman instead of our dispatch center. And when appropriate, they directly dispatch these mobile crisis responders so they can go just handle it on their own. We're also working to have our 911 dispatch center take appropriate calls and transfer it over to them to be able to do that as well. So that's just one example, but there are many other duties and tasks and types of calls that probably shouldn't be a police matter. One of them I can think of years ago has to do more with code compliance, but we had code compliance in our department, and we would get calls that from a neighbor that their neighbor's fence boards are on the wrong side of the fence. Right? There's no Montana state law that says which side of the fence your boards need to be on. Something like that clearly should be outside the police department. That should be a completely separate entity that enforces that type of thing. And that's kind of an odd example, but expand that into many different types of calls, and that's something we're constantly working on. All right, projects, some things we're working on right now. Public communication. We have a communications specialist now, something we've been trying to get for a while. The goal is to always or consistently give out the information that we should be providing. There was a time in years past where something happened in town, you could go to our social media channels, maybe our news page, and you might see something about it, you might not. And I don't like that. I want there to be information out if something happens, that people know they will see it from us. And I think we're doing a much better job with that. We're trying to increase the call for service data that we put out. We're trying to increase a wide variety of the communication of the ways we communicate with the public. So we've really put a lot of work into that lately. Next, we're doing operational staffing study right now. That's where we have an outside consultant come in, take a look at the department, make suggestions about changes we should make, what is the appropriate level of staffing. I can tell you, I think if you do a whole bunch of studies, they're all going to come back with different results. But regardless, there's going to be things we can glean from any study. Training, always things we can train on. When you respond, you can only imagine the number of things that an officer needs to know to appropriately handle any type of situation. Officers who've been patrol officers for 20 years will still go to a call this week that they have never seen or had to handle before. There's so much to know in this industry, and it continues increasing. So we're trying to increase the amount of training that we give. One way we're doing that is through the use of our building. We have a really nice training room there, and our training sergeant's done a phenomenal job bringing trainers in. It's much cheaper if we can bring the trainer here. We have 4 or 5 people go. We invite other law enforcement agencies rather than us sending people out. One of those areas that we're trying to improve is our incident command. That's what IC stands for. The picture on the bottom right is a picture of one of our lieutenant's pickups. That is a role. We have a lieutenant on each night in the evening, and they are trained in incident command. So when those bigger events happen that we didn't used to have, they're better prepared to handle it. And I think we're doing a much better job of that. That includes our planning for large events. We are slowly having an increasing number of large events in town. The football games get bigger each year. President Trump was here last fall. We have events on Main Street more routinely that are bigger. And we need to be planning ahead for the worst case scenario. We can't just assume somebody that because it's Bozeman, that doesn't happen here. I hear that stuff all the time. That we don't have to take steps to ensure nobody just takes a car and just drives through the crowd. Well, we're taking those steps now. We have barricades we put up. We're doing a better job at looking at the entire activity ahead of time. What kind of crowds are they expecting? And putting together a more robust plan to prevent crime. It's much easier to prevent something bad from happening than coming in afterwards and trying to clean it up. So that's our goal with that. AI, artificial intelligence, and the use of technology. That is a constant thing that we're working on. What's worth it? What's not worth it? What's too expensive? What shouldn't we be looking at? Every piece of technology sounds great, but it always has its drawbacks. So we're constantly evaluating that. And then officer wellness. Like I said earlier, this is a very tough job. It takes its toll on the officers. What they see in one shift is more chaos and trauma than most people see in many, many, many years. I hear this routinely from people who come and do a ride-along with a police officer or attend our Citizens Police Academy. They say constantly, I had no idea. I've heard stories of what somebody saw when they did a ride-along back in 2012. Well, what they saw that night, I promise that officer has no idea. They don't recall that, right? For that person riding along or that victim they dealt with, this is one of the biggest moments of their lives potentially, something they've never seen before. For the officer, unfortunately, it's just Thursday. It's just another day. So the best way we can take care of the community is if we take care of our people better so they can take care of the community. So we're really trying to work on how we care for our officers. I know Dan's doing the same with his people. Keeping them whole, we tell our people this career is a marathon, not a sprint. The best way that we can keep you serving the community is for you to take care of yourself and us to take care of you. So that's something we focus on constantly as well. I think that's all I have.
That's it. That's a lot. You guys are doing a lot. Thank you so much for your commitment. And now we will turn it over to Sheriff Ann Springer. Hello.
All right, thank you. That one working?
All right. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. So I'm going to probably stand up because I like to do that. Jim, off the trade side so I can stand over here and not trip you. So the sheriff's office, what I've really found when I go to the community is that a lot of people just don't understand the difference between the sheriff's office and the police departments. And for the most part, we're very similar. We have a lot of the same functions as a police department, but there's a lot of other statutory duties that go along with that. One of the big differences is the sheriff is an elected official rather than an appointed official. And, I like to say that Jim he has to make one person happy, and he keeps his job. And I have to make 50.1% of the population happy to keep my job. So that is really kind of one of the bigger deals with the sheriff's office. But it's a 4-year term. There are no term limits to a sheriff. But our jurisdiction is kind of the entire county. And people always wonder, like, why is your car here, your car's there? Well, the police department typically, they are in an incorporated area. That'd be City of Belgrade, City of Bozeman, City of Manhattan. The other areas, our primary law enforcement functions are outside of incorporated portions. So when we talk about our law enforcement functions, typically that's going to be outside of an incorporated city. Now, it doesn't mean, interestingly enough, in Gallatin County, that means that we serve about the same population base as the City of Bozeman with Belgrade together. So we're about 48% of the population, and then Belgrade and Bozeman together about 52% of the population of the county. So we serve a significant amount of people, but it's over 2,600 square miles instead of 20 square miles, or I don't know what Belgrade is, 5 square miles, 6 square miles. So we just have a lot longer. The nice thing about that is we have a lot more time to make a plan. And when Jim talks about people, we go to these crazy events, as a deputy, we actually have a lot more time to come up with a plan. We can have 18 to 25-minute response time. That's not uncommon. Typically, in a city, you'll see a 3 to 4 to 5-minute response time. So we can go ahead and switch to the next one. The responsibility of the sheriff, by statute, we have full law enforcement duties. Some people that are from different parts of the country, sheriff's offices are solely detention and courts. We are actually a full-service sheriff's office, so we do all the law enforcement duties as well. We also have a detention center. That's a responsibility mandated by statute. Search and rescue as well. Civil service and processing, courts, transports, coroner. Now the chaplain services I have up there, that's not a statutory mandate. So we can move to the next one. One of the things that, these are some of the duties that we do outside of our statutory, and that would include the chaplaincy. Look at that good-looking chaplain down there on the bottom right. Dale, are you still here? There he is. All right. Youth and Family Outreach Program, which is something that we started a few years ago regarding those that may remember when the young man was killed in West Yellowstone. He was tortured. It was an incredibly heinous crime. The videos of that death and the torture that they did on that kid that was all videoed was crazy. But what we learned in that is that there's a gap between schools, child protective services, and law enforcement. And so what we created was a program that actually can try to fill that gap. So that we're actually engaging with these people prior to something like that occurring again. So Youth and Family Outreach Program, we have 2 law enforcement officers that are in that, and then a social worker who runs the program. And so they engage the schools, they engage a lot of youth programs, etc. The chaplain service, of course, training. Fresh Start is a program that comes out of our detention center. And that is essentially trying to get people from the detention center back into the community. What we don't want is people going back to detention centers. If once they're in and they go out, we want to try and keep them out. We want them to somehow engage in the community and become a better member of society. Doesn't always happen. Our detention center's recidivism rate is 15%. The national average is about 50%. So we do an exceptional job in Gallatin County of not getting people back into our jail. And that goes to there's a lot of reasons for that. Fresh Start is one of them. That connects them to services outside. It also connects them to whether that's a men's group or a women's group or some kind of thing that will help them not come back to it. Anyway, so that's a long story with all that stuff. Crisis intervention, I'm kind of going fast because I know they want to get to questions, but crisis intervention, that is the classic de-escalation. Kind of started back in the mid-2000s, and we have a very large crisis intervention team and program in Gallatin County, the police department, as well as our office and the community as a whole are members of that, and that's about trying to de-escalate rather than escalate events so that we're not getting into the shootings or getting into fights. And I will tell you that one of the differences from the sheriff's office is we are often out there alone, and the deputies have to learn how to talk themselves out of things, and they know that. For everything that occurs out there, you know there's someone bigger and badder than you that can beat you up. And so you learn how to talk your way out. It can be 12, 15, 18 minutes for another person to arrive, sometimes shorter. If you have four corners, you'll have someone there right away. If you're down in West Yellowstone, it could be a long time. So that is one very big difference that we see in sheriff's offices. So that is one of the key things with de-escalation, and I think our guys do a really good job of that. The resiliency education, Chief mentioned it as well. That is the wellness program, working a lot through that. We've sent people out to resiliency centers in Virginia and a couple other places to bring that back. What kind of training, what kind of things are we looking at to try and help our people so that we're not, law enforcement still has a very high suicide rate, and we're trying to, limit those numbers. You add that on top of Montana's suicide rates, which are also horrific. We want to make sure that we're not a member of that. But we've had, one here recently, this last year, down in West Yellowstone, one of the law enforcement officers killed herself, and we just don't want that to happen again. So it's kind of part of the, we can go ahead and switch that. 2,600 square miles. Those that don't know, West Yellowstone is in Gallatin County. So is Three Forks, and so is the top of the pass. And then so is Modlo, which is way out north. Don't go out there. Don't listen to your GPS if you're trying to get to White Sulphur Springs. It's a really bad way to get there. Someone was just told how to get, someone was coming back from White Sulphur through Bridger, and their GPS told them to go over Flathead. So they tried it. So anyone that's ever been over Flathead Pass, you don't want to do that in a small car. So anyhow, they got far enough that we had to call search and rescue. So go ahead, sir. We have 74 sworn deputies. We have 50 civilian detention officers, 23 support staff, 8 medical personnel. They work in the detention center. We have medical personnel, they're nurses, and then a nurse practitioner and a medical director. So they are on about 16 hours a day, and then the rest of it we'd have to go to the hospital. And then 270 volunteers. We have about 155, 160 volunteers in search and rescue, and about 110 to 120 that work programs inside of our detention center. That programs is also what goes towards some of the recidivism rate, and we'll get into that. Go ahead. These are all the functions that law enforcement does. The Sheriff's Office has between investigations being your standard detective division, ICAC being internet crimes against children. Some of this, I'm going to kind of fly through it because we have very similar law enforcement functions. He does not have a mounted patrol. I have a very small one, but I think we've got 3 or 4 that ride horses. But other than that, we really have about the same kind of work when it comes down to law enforcement services. So go ahead. This year in 2024, we ran 51,468 calls for service. It's a very active sheriff's office. You don't typically see those numbers across the state of Montana. We are also trying to do the proactive reactive thing. We have about 60% reactive to 40% proactive calls. This month was our busiest month we've had in the sheriff's office ever, 5,200 calls for the month of May. And the awesome piece of that was 2,200 of those were reactive and 3,000 of those were proactive. So that's actually a shift. Now, I don't think that's going to stick around. I think that's an anomaly. But part of that is an emphasis on getting people out, doing traffic stops. Some of that is where we are living now. Those that know, he mentioned the high school, the old high school. We are out at Four Corners in the old shooting range. If those that I know, I'm working on trying to get the public in there. I get that. So there's an insurance issue. I would love to do it, and I think there's a plan to try and get there. But insurance is the killer. Other than that, that's where we are. When we built that place, bought the place, and then built and added on twice, we mapped it out, and there was 70% of our calls for the sheriff's office were within 9 miles of that building. So it's a great place for us to live and work and house pretty much all of our services other than our canyon division, which are the 10 deputies that live in the southern part of the canyon, or the county, and then the 4 west end deputies that live in Three Forks, and they kind of manage those areas. Essentially the valley, the detectives, the drug task force, all of that. And then switch. Detectives breakdown, we are still 63% of sex crimes is our primary detective role. 63% of our cases are sex crimes. And sometimes that's family members, most of the time it's family members. So that is still our most active, and I'm guessing probably similar in your office. So we can go ahead and switch. A lot of this stuff you have in your paperwork too. One of the things, the drug task force is housed out of the sheriff's office. I think that started in about 1992 or 93, that grant, and it's kind of continued. Most of the people are now hard funded, which is great. Anytime we can get our people hard funded and off the grants, it's excellent. But in 2024 alone, we had, if you look at, I tried to break down the numbers in essentially if you buy at Costco or if you buy somewhere else, right? So if you buy bulk and you're the dealer, methamphetamine is $186,000 street value is what the guy sees in 2024. Street value, which is the user value, is about 441. If you buy bigger in ounces, you pay less. If you buy grams, you pay more equal amounts, right? Cocaine, 118,000, 224,000 street value. Fentanyl pills, 327,000 street value. And that's 1 year. So we are a very busy drug task force. Jim and I actually served on the task force together. It's larger and bigger today. You see a lot more drugs today, and a lot more cases that go federal. So that's a good thing. Usually puts them away home. Detention center. Talk about recidivism. The inmate makeup and population. It's really important for people to understand what goes on in a detention center. They are pre-sentenced people. They're actually pre-trial people usually. That means in our system, they are not guilty of anything yet. Okay? So it's important as a community that we recognize our role when it's doing that. It doesn't take a whole lot to land yourself in jail. Everyone in this room could raise their hand and say that they know someone that landed themselves in jail, whether that was for a DUI, it could be a domestic situation, it could be trespassing on accident sometimes. It's really not that hard. A lot of people that end up in jail are our community members, and many of us will know them. So that's important versus a prison, which is they are actually Department of Corrections people, and they are sentenced, they've been found guilty, and they've been sentenced, and they're in prison. Whole different ballgame. Okay? These people are not found guilty yet, for the most part. And they are our system, our jail. If you ever want to go through it, you guys have paid for it. You guys are welcome to set up a tour with us. We'd love to take you through that. It's not like the programs that you see on TV. It's actually fairly quiet. It's very civilized. You'll see that we've got some bad dudes in there, don't get me wrong, but they are, we treat them with a lot of respect. They do the same back. And it's an excellent, very well-run facility. We average about 160 people in our facility. We have a 200-bed facility. We are typically about full at around 180 because of the way classification works. So when someone comes in, you classify them high, medium, lows, and they'd have to fall perfectly in those classifications to hit the 200 mark. So we're full around 180. We have programs. We have about 40 different programs that we offer. It's all run by volunteers. It's not through paid staff. And they do everything from adult classes, like how to adult, how to parent, how to manage money, to all the religious programs that come through. So there's a lot of different options that go through that. The volunteers, again, I said, like I said, 110 to 120 volunteers, and then the Fresh Start program as they release into the community. Go ahead and switch that. Search and rescue is a huge part of our sheriff's office. We have a new search and rescue building that will be completed here in a month, right next to our building out Four Corners, which is great. Finally, they're going to have a facility that meets their needs as well, and we're co-located. So trying to get all of our services co-located is important for the sheriff's office. When it comes to search and rescue, they do amazing work, again, with about 150, 160 volunteers. We have 3 paid folks. One's the captain of the sheriff's office, one's a training officer from the sheriff's office, and then the other one is the administrative staff. Go ahead and switch. They ran 138 calls, which is about standard for us, and a third of those are search and a third of those are rescues. And it's about 50-50 when it comes to tourists and locals. We save a lot more locals. It's been 60-40, this year was 50-50, but typically it's the locals that get themselves in trouble, not necessarily the tourists. Go ahead and switch. And first off, with search and rescue, please call early, don't wait. That's what gets you in trouble. That's what gets our people that are going to go out there and help you, that gets them in trouble as well. If you call us early enough, when you start realizing that you're having a problem, or that the weather's changing, you weren't prepared, whatever the case. I know it's embarrassing, and everyone teases me about Sheriff Springer says, "Don't do this," right? And when you go on your hikes, and you're right, but don't be embarrassed. Please call us. We want to get out there. Well, again, these folks all have real jobs. If we wait till 10 p.m. and now you're in real trouble, and the weather has gotten bad, and you're cold, and nighttime, we can't find you, and you were in trouble at 4 p.m., we could have got you there on a helicopter, got you out of there, and an hour and a half later, we'd been done. So please call early and tell your friends to call. Civil service is another area for the sheriff's office. Anytime you see evictions, or you have divorce papers, or there's, you name it, there's orders of protection, all that stuff is served by the sheriff's office. We do about 6,000 papers a year, which is a lot of papers. If you think about 2,600 square miles, and deputies have to drive to doors, knock on doors, and give paper. It can take a long, long time, and it's rarely on the first attempt. So, and people will come in and get papers as well, but the 6,000 papers is significant. It's broken down into what those all are, but I think it's in your form. The courts, we just built the new Justice Center, which is next to the detention center, which is just south of the imploded Catholic High School. And if you haven't seen it, it's a beautiful building. It houses all the district courts, the juvenile courts, as well as the justice courts. It does not house law enforcement. We have a small little office there that we have a couple of sworn people, and then some essentially bailiffs. What's the difference in courts? District court, justice court. So district court handles all the felony cases. Sure, Jim was talking about felony cases. A felony in the city, a felony in the county, they all end up in justice court, or in district court. City court is misdemeanor crimes only, traffic and misdemeanors. Justice court is traffic and misdemeanors, and then some small claim stuff. They will see the initial appearance of a felony, but that's it. And then it moves to district court. So very active court systems there, and those are the responsibilities. Jim has court people for the city courts, and then I've got court people for the justice and district courts. We can move on. The other thing the sheriff's is mandated to do our transports, and we drive all over the state and fly all over the country to pick up people. If someone has served a warrant in Tennessee, and it's one of Gallup County's warrants, our responsibility is to go down and get them. So we send people down there and fly them back commercial. So we've got a number of people that are trained to do that. We also will drive all over the state and move inmates, and then we also bring people to the state hospital for mental health evaluations and those kind of things. That has decreased significantly over the years with all of the focus that the counties and the cities have put on mental health here. Bozeman Health is really committed themselves to doing something different with mental health as well. So this community has taken a big bite out of that. We were making a lot of trips to and from Warm Springs. and it's for one person. So when we have someone that has to go to Warm Springs, they go there, we drive them there, we drop them off, within 72 hours we go pick them back up and bring them back to Gallatin County for their court hearing, then we drive them back to Warm Springs, and then they get released and we pick them up and bring them back to Gallatin County. One person, 4 to 6 trips depending, and that's all deputy time. And typically, one person will do it, but sometimes we like to travel with 2 if we have to, depends on the person. We also the coroner's office, so we respond to any death that happens outside of a hospital setting of 24 hours. If they've been admitted for over 24 hours, the doctors will do it. Hospice deaths, we don't respond to those. We take the phone calls. We talk to them on the phone, and typically they are being monitored by a physician or a nurse practitioner or someone else of the equivalent. But all other deaths are the responsibility of the. Even if they were admitted in the hospital and it was an accident, homicide, or suicide, or undetermined, is responsibility of the coroner's office. A natural death after 24 hours is the responsibility of the doctors can do it. I have a full-time coroner that he does that. He's a sworn deputy that does that for his job. I'm the elected coroner, and then we have a number of deputy coroners that take on call days, and they're not volunteers, but they are paid. My county commissioner's here, so I don't want to say anything about that. They are paid. They're great people. They really love the investigative work of it. A lot of them want to get into law enforcement or some kind of crime scene management after this. Go ahead and move on. I'm just kidding, Zach. They've been very good at this. The values of the sheriff's office, this is what we believe in. We do believe that our job here is to keep the peace. That is our primary goal as the sheriff's office. And we do that in multiple different ways, as we talked about. We serve you, we serve one another, and then we try to do it in a very balanced way. We recognize that it's a tough job, and we want to keep our people very balanced. Go ahead and switch. This is an app that has been created recently. You can probably reach it with your phone. I did it from the back, so you're welcome to download this app. It has the jail roster on it. It has a lot of information. If you want to know who's in jail and what their charges are they in immigration hold? Do they get all of that all the time too? It'll tell you all those things. That is an excellent app. It has a lot of the stuff. People are looking for public fingerprints. They're looking for concealed weapons stuff. It's all right there. We hope to expand that app, and we will use that for more of the emergency stuff. We've had in the past, like the Bridger Fire, when we use Facebook and those kind of things. It's effective, but it's effective with people of our age. So we want to get this app out to people that will download these kind of apps, and then they'll actually receive notifications of whatever emergency may be going on. Right now, it's more used for the detention side, but it's actually an excellent one if you're looking to see who's around, who's been put in jail. Last slide, maybe. That's me. That's my cell number. I give it out freely. Anyone can have it. I work for you directly. You are welcome to call me. Don't be offended if I send you to another person that is more inclined to do whatever it is that's going on. But please take my number and call me if you have something. So we'll take it. We'll leave it at that. I think we can go into the question.
Yourself on. You guys are doing so much, and I think I speak, and I hope I speak for everybody in this room, that we are supremely grateful for your service to our communities. So we will go ahead and open this up to the public Q&A session. So what we'll do is we'll move this mic down. I'm not sure how many people have a question, but we'll ask you to come up to the mic, and they will answer your questions as they come in. You can come up now. And I think we'll just maybe leave this here unless there's a line out the door.
Hello, my name is Anna Shimivinian, and as a third-generation immigrant, I have a question about what is about what we call undocumented individuals.
I'm sorry?
Undocumented individuals. Undocumented, yes. And as an immigrant, I know that in America there are only two kinds of undocumented people. One is criminals who want to avoid, who don't want their identity being disclosed, and the second kind is victims of human trafficking. And I'm not talking now about criminals, you know how to deal with them, but I am extremely concerned about victims of human trafficking because according to what I heard during a hearing of these legislators, there was in the Latin country, mostly in Bosnia, there is a very strong opposition for requirement schools and hospitals to report individuals who don't have document providing their identity. So if hospital gets a girl with documents, this girl most likely victim of sexual trafficking, and hospital do not report this girl anywhere, then this victim just goes back to her to her traffickers. The same with kids in school, the same with kids who were brainwashed that they're transgenders and they ran away from their parents. So my question is, do you have cooperation with schools, with hospitals, and what happens with human trafficking in our area? Thank you.
Probably a multiple part answer, but human trafficking really has two parts. It's labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And the hospitals and the schools are still mandatory reporters. It doesn't matter anyone's documentation status. If someone is a victim of sexual crimes or someone appears to be a victim of family crimes, something of that nature, they are mandatorily required to report to CPS, centralized intake. So that piece of it should still be being done if they recognize it. However, reporting on their documentation status is not the place of the schools, not the place of law enforcement, even local law enforcement. It's not inside of our charges. We don't even have the jurisdiction to do that. So that is the responsibility of, we have kind of like tax evasion. There is a federal organization that does tax evasion investigations. That is not the responsibility of the Galvin County Sheriff's Office to do tax evasion investigations. There is a unit for that. ICE investigations, that is their responsibility to do those ICE investigations. We are limited in scope. Now, there are ways that the documentation happens through the criminal piece. But as far as at a hospital, at a school, I do not believe they are required to do notification on the document. I don't think they would even know, to be honest. But I really don't know the answer to that. It's really outside my scope, but they are mandatory reporters.
We did have, go ahead and come up. I was going to say, we've got dozens of questions that came in before the meeting, so don't be shy. I have plenty here, and we'll hope not to duplicate them.
Sure, quick question. One of our local business owners in Bozeman, after work, he went out to his truck, somebody knocked on his window, and he opened it, and the guy said, "You need to respect the cartel." So my question to you is, how are you protecting business owners, both of you, from the cartel? Montana Honeybee was broken into. How are we protecting our businesses? Thank you.
So I'll start with that one. I guess it depends kind of on what crime has occurred, obviously which jurisdiction it's in, and if we can relate it to any cartel. So I'm sure Sheriff Springer would probably agree with this. We hear the word cartel a lot, and it's hard to know what does that mean. So back when we were both in the drug task force, we heard that the drugs were coming from the cartel, for example. At some point they were, but were the people here part of the cartel? Were they 18 steps away from them? It's often very difficult to be able to determine what is cartel and what is not. There definitely is a perception in the community at times that we don't have that kind of activity here, that this is Bozeman, this is Montana, we don't have that kind of activity here, and we absolutely do. If you know what to look for, and you know the signs, you can see that that kind of activity is around. To answer your question, it's a little bit difficult, mainly because if you're talking about protecting local businesses' property, from what I have seen, the cartel activity is, at least in our area, has been more related to drugs. I know the cartels certainly outside the area have involvement in a lot of more types of crimes. We haven't seen that increasing as much as I think some other areas have. But regardless, we've got to investigate the crime regardless of whether it's attached to a cartel or not. And once we can determine if we have probable cause to arrest somebody, we will. And then after that, obviously other steps, like he was talking about, immigration may come in if they are undocumented and put that on them, a charge or hold on them after we have charged them with whatever local crimes we typically would, regardless of whether they're a cartel member or not, regardless of what type of member of the community they are.
I agree. I just add that being a member of the cartel, a member of Banditos, a member of Hell's Angels, right? It's not a crime to be associated to those. What's a crime is what you do once you're associated with those. And the cartels themselves, when you look around the country or south of the border, it's really about violent crime, and that's what we allowed to hear about. In Gallatin County right now, we're seeing we have 26 identified cartel members that we know of, and we have one that's been federally indicted, and then 4 that have been removed from the area. So when we talk about cartel members, it's one thing to know who they are. It's another thing to work a case to try and get into them and try to get them charged with something, right? So that's part of our job to do that. It's not easy, but them being identified as a cartel member in and of itself is not a crime. I think it's important that we recognize that. It's certainly an indication that we want to look deeper into that. Why they work in the drug trade is because of the money. That's why they do it. There's money to be made in drugs, and especially in Gallatin County. We have the most expensive drugs in all of the state of Montana. And oddly enough, the 2 gangs that we have identified, or the 2 cartels that we have identified, actually work together in this community. They're not opposing factions, which is very unusual anywhere else. It's because there's no reason, because there's money to be made. Part of this is they're not making the money. It's not all being sold in Gallatin County. It's a distribution hub out of Gallatin County into the rest of the state. And a piece of that is mainly because of the growth in population of our immigration workers. Many of them are legal, some of them are illegal. And we're seeing a growth of that. There is, we have very easy access to airports. We know of them flying directly in from other communities and flying right into Bozeman. It's a very good hub to send drugs out of. And then they want to, and as we talk to some of them, we've even moved them along, they want to raise their kids in the same reason that everyone else wants to raise their kids in Bozeman. And so they come to this location for the exact same reasons a lot of other people do. They're just criminals and they're involved in the drug trade. And we had those interviews, Jim and I had those interviews even when we were back on the drug task force.
We're talking about the detention center, and there's been talk about the DA in Gallatin County against ICE using those beds and so forth. So how does all of that fit together? Part of it's a political argument. Part of it might be above the enforcement thing because you have to obey the directions that you get. But how does that whole, from your perspective, how does that work?
The attempt there was to not make it political. The attempt there was to try and make it a public safety issue. Anytime we bring politics into public safety problems, I think that's a problem. If it's a public safety concern, let's deal with it that way. In that particular event that you're talking about, there's a lot of misperceptions as to what ICE holds and ICE beds are, and the best explanation I can have for it is it's essentially a 3-part process. Every community in Montana has the first part, and that is you arrest someone for a DUI, you take them to the jail. If they were born in the United States, and we know that by certain ways, ICE is not contacted. If they were born outside the United States, regardless if it was on a military base or anywhere else, ICE is involved. And ICE gets notified through that system. So if someone gets arrested for DUI, they're not here legally. ICE then puts a detainer on them. It's a 48-hour detainer if they want to. That 48-hour detainer doesn't take effect until the person bonds out or is released from our jail somehow. So if they're in there for a DUI, a normal person can bond out, we release them to a sober person, and they go out our lobby. Someone that has an ICE detainer, they can bond out, but they don't get to leave for 48 hours. We will hold them for 48 more hours until ICE shows up, or they may not show up. If they don't show up in that 48th hour hit, they are released back into the community. Okay? If they show up, they go to ICE. At that point, ICE takes them to step 2. Step 2 is a detention facility. There are 0 detention beds in Montana. The only ones are in Idaho. And they are at a sheriff's office in Idaho, a couple sheriff's offices in Idaho, who have designated certain beds to be that for the same thing we're talking about, detention beds for ICE. They then go to the detention facility. They're typically there for 72 hours to a week, and then they go to step 3. Step 3 is in Salt Lake or Las Vegas, and that's where they have their court hearings, at which point they make a determination on the deportation status. That's the 3-step process. What we were trying to do here in Gallatin County, remember, every community in Montana has step 1. We can arrest someone, they may not be legal in this country, here, and that's step 1. Step 2 is what we were talking about in Gallatin County, is having some designated beds for ICE so that they could hold people there until they can get down to their court hearings in Salt Lake or Las Vegas. The public safety concern that generated is the following. ICE does not have any beds to hold someone anymore. Idaho is full, and it's not Idaho's problem to solve Montana's problem. So now we can't, they're full in Idaho, they're not taking them there anymore. So the public safety issue is people that are arrested here, bond out, they are immediately being released back into the community. There are no beds for them anywhere in the state of Montana. We are working through that. I think there's solutions to that. Cascade County is looking at it, but why did they want Bozeman? There was a reason why they wanted Bozeman. We are one of the largest cities in Montana that still has bed capacity in the detention center. We're at 151 beds today, and we're at a 200-bed facility. We average about 164. So we're in Yellowstone County is double what they're supposed to have. Missoula County, same problem. Cascade County, same problem. We are one of the fewest that, or one of the few that actually has bed space. Second, we are a straight shot to Salt Lake City and Las Vegas. We have more flights out of Bozeman to Salt Lake. We have more flights out of Bozeman to Las Vegas. We have a straight 5.5-hour drive to Salt Lake to get them to their hearings. Third thing, I believe we could have done it more humanely than any other community in the state of Montana. We have a very humane detention center. It is well run, we have great programs, and we have incredible people that work there. And so those are the 3 kind of processes for me, and it's a public safety issue. It's not a political one.
I see you guys standing up. Don't be shy, come on up and get close.
Of 7th and Main. And there's 5 buildings, they were selling cannabis. Seems to be a lot of that going on now. And is that, is that serious? Why is this open? Is that safe to do that? No. In other words, isn't that kind of dangerous? I'm concerned about those that's selling, that's why.
So as you might be aware, marijuana and the legality and legalness of marijuana has gone up and down a lot over the years. We've both been involved in stages where it was very unclear how much you could have, how much could you grow, what could you do. This was when medicinal marijuana was becoming a thing. Now recreational marijuana is also legal, so that entire landscape has changed. So in the city there are shops that sell marijuana. What we've noticed is that they do come and go. I think like any other industry that someone is in, the market can support a certain number of shops. And so we've seen, especially early on when it became legal, there were a lot that wanted to apply and become and be able to sell marijuana legally. They've actually dwindled and gone down a little bit. So I think a lot of us were not honestly sure what the overall effects of the legalization of marijuana would be. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but what I can say just from an objective standpoint is that I haven't seen the ramifications that at least some members of the community and myself to some extent thought we would see from it. What we are seeing, and this is anecdotal, I don't have data off the top of my head, but we are seeing more driving under the influence of drugs than we used to. When we were both in the street years ago, everybody was driving under the influence, it was all alcohol, and that has changed as well. So we're seeing a lot of other things, including marijuana, in people's system when they're being arrested for driving under the influence.
Have you been involved with setting up measures to prevent killings and suicides in our schools, and if so, what are those measures?
So for our department, we have a very robust school resource officer program. So just from our department, we have a partnership with the Bozeman Schools where we have 4 school resource officers that work in the schools, 1 in each high school, and then 1 in each junior high. And each of those working in the junior high are also responsible for 4 grade schools, because there are 8 grade schools in town. We also have a sergeant that oversees the program. So as far as our contribution in the schools, that is by far the biggest and best way that we have a relationship with the school district. Those school resource officers and the sergeant are very much viewed as staff members in the department, or in the school district. It really impresses me when I see how they're included in the school district, how they're viewed. I've walked along with almost all of our school resource officers, and they are really viewed just like a teacher in the school. The staff treat them that way. The students can look up to them. They end up being teachers, mentors, and to some extent law enforcement officers. But any program that we have in the schools would be our participation with the school resource officers and their involvement with the school district in any programs they have. We don't independently run any programs like that outside of what the school district does, and aside from what our school resource officers would be involved in.
We have a lot more schools than we have manpower. We have a school resource officer in Big Sky. We have 1 here in the Valley. I say the Valley, there's 15 schools in the Valley for 1 person. We have a 2nd school resource officer that will be starting in the fall. Thanks to the commissioners again, they did authorize that a year and a half ago. And with our staffing numbers, we're getting to that point. Those are all important. However, a lot of it has to do with see something, report something. The issue though becomes that we can't always act on things. A lot of stuff we receive is it's not based in fact yet, and we have to then research it and find out actual facts. And we just can't do certain things. We can't just search someone's house, search someone's car. People have rights, and Montana is awesome for that. We have some of the strongest individual rights in the state of Montana, which is a great thing for citizens. It's a very difficult thing for law enforcement. We are probably the most difficult place in the United States when it comes to search and seizure. It's great, and it's also very difficult. So that is one area that we struggle with when we get all these phone calls about something or other. However, it's still reported. We do get involved. The last thing about that is we will place armed guards at banks, and we put armed guards in our legislature, and we will use armed people to protect our money and our politicians. I think it's fair to have people that are armed to protect our children.
First, I want to thank you for your participation and the Pride celebrations that occurred this weekend. I know that's your job, but I think that was appreciated by everyone attending. Also, I know a community member who participated in the police academy. And just for those of us here, could you just explain a little bit about that and that opportunity? Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for teeing that up. So our Citizens Police Academy is something that we hold twice a year. Any citizen is welcome to attend. Essentially, it's either Wednesday or Thursday night, depending on what they plan for that time. You meet for about 3 hours, anywhere from 8, I believe it's at about 8 or 9 weeks right now. But what we're really trying to do is give you a glimpse into what goes on at the police department. So usually the first night, I give a short intro, kind of talk a little bit about the department, and then we have different commanders come up and talk about their roles, tour of our building, and from there, it's on our officers and staff to show the members what they do. And I think having, for example, during patrol night, having you actually sit in a patrol car and make a traffic stop, usually in a parking lot of one of our staff members, and just to see what it feels like to walk up on a car where you don't know who you stopped, you don't know what their intentions are, you don't know why they were driving like that, to see how officers are treated, it really gives a different perspective. Sometimes they've done things like put a handgun on the dash and just see if the Citizens Police Academy attendee even noticed it was there. And that'll give you a real idea of, oh, that's what our officers actually face each day. They also have crime scene night with the detectives. We usually go through the detention center, the 911 center, just try to give a little glimpse into everything that goes on in our department, including our special response team, our SWAT team. We have a joint team between the city and county that we contribute to equally. We're like the co-parents of the team. So yeah, it's a great program to actually learn about what goes on. And I always appreciate those opportunities, kind of like this, because as I'm sure you can imagine, there are so many theories and thoughts and rumors about what happens and why it happens, and by far the vast majority is simply not true. And the officers actually really enjoy it too, because it's rare that they get to get in front of a citizen who came voluntarily to have interaction with them and wants to learn and see what they do. So they actually enjoy it too, because they get to share with the community about how difficult their work is and what a great job they do in the community.
We do have one at the sheriff's office, and I recommend going to both, because they are very similar and very different. So that's, reach out to us if you're interested. The last piece of that, when we were children, I remember going to the fire department all the time. Their fire bay doors were open, the truck doors were open. As a kid, you'd walk in and they would put you up in the truck and do all these things. And you show up at the police department, it was like closed doors, shut down, everything's locked, right? And I think as law enforcement community over the last 20, 25 years, we've learned that we have to be more open. And we have to kind of give you a peek behind the curtain and let you know what it is that we do. So that's kind of why all of those academies started around the world.
First of all, thank you so very much for what you do. I'm going to read this. It's addressed basically for both Chief and for Sheriff, but you know, we are a community here in Gallatin County, so any broad or focused response is appreciated. In your respective jurisdictions, how is your department planning to ensure and protect our First Amendment right to assemble and express our views through peaceful protest in Gallatin County?
So that is one of the fundamental, I think, duties of ours, is not to quash one person's opinion to protect the other person's opinion. We get this routinely, and it happens all across the spectrum, where you need to prevent that person from protesting our protest. And we simply can't do that. So we have made it very clear to all the officers, and I believe they have a very clear understanding that they cannot prohibit people from expressing themselves. Now, how they do that, that's where the crime comes in. If there's disorderly conduct, if they're blocking traffic, that type of thing. But we make it very clear to our folks that Our goal is to keep the peace while allowing people to assemble, while allowing people to express their opinions. We have ongoing conversations with every event that happens. Even this past weekend, we had a relatively large Pride event in town. We have to have all the plans in place. How do we protect their right to do that? If someone wants to protest, how do we protect that right? So we try to be very, very balanced that way. This all goes all the way down to, we have groups that are called First Amendment auditors that will show up at our buildings. I'm sure you've had this too. They come to our buildings and typically try to video something outside the building, and their goal is just to instigate a problem with law enforcement. And they're hoping that we step on those rights and tell them, you need to get out of here, you can't be in this parking lot taking video of us, now we're in trouble. So we've actually had this happen a couple times with our officers, and they walk out to them and say, hi, how's it going today? Just wondering what you were doing out here. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? And they're very aware that they need to allow them to do that, even if it feels uncomfortable, because like we talked about, you see something, say something. Is it suspicious? Is it something we should take action on? Or is it something we should allow people to do? The next part of that is we have to have very clear policies just so officers know what to do when they're being recorded in public. When we were on the street, nobody had a camera in their pocket. Now, the second an officer stops somebody, whether it's a bar fight downtown, regardless of what it is, everybody has their cameras out. Well, they know you had better allow that person, as long as they're not interfering with you or causing a problem, obstructing what you're doing, you have to allow them to take that video of you. We just take it one step farther. Now we just take video ourselves too. Patrol car over there is taking video, and they all have cameras right here. And that is all a part of that same goal, is to make sure that that right isn't trampled.
You know, this community's been excellent when it comes to protests. And during the whole 2020 stuff, and we had the riots around the country, Galvin County, City of Bozeman, we had our protests, but they were very, very civilized. And I remember BLM stuff, I remember Trucks for Trump, I can list out a bunch of them. We had some, I would be in conversations with people that we went to the National Academy with, and they were working in other places around this country, and it was absolute chaos. And we would have we had a BLM protest in Bozeman, and they would stay on the sidewalks, they'd walk march right up where they were told to march, they'd go right in front of the courthouse, they'd do their thing, and they'd go home. Awesome. And this community has always kind of been that way. I think the only time we had some graffiti on the courthouse, but they used water-based paint, so they sprayed it out. Awesome. So my friends around the country were surprised to hear that, but it was like, no, it was great. So.
I was just wondering if I'm sure you are aware that Flag Day is also Hate Trump Day in Bozeman, and they're going to have a lot of protesters, and wonder if you guys are aware of that. I would assume you are. Because there was some kind of protest like about 3 weeks ago, and I have some friends that work downtown in the retail shops, and there was problems in the store, people trying to rip the flag off outside of the store. I mean, there was a lot of chaos going on, and I did hear from some of the people that worked in the shops, we didn't see any cops, we had our employees trying to shove them out the door. So, I don't know what you guys are aware of or not, but the week from Saturday, something's gonna happen. If you follow the Democrat websites, you should hear about what they're up to.
I can just speak generically for our department. We have a variety of partners, methods, and tools that we use to monitor potential activity. Again, it's tough to balance. Like he said, if you see something, say something. What we've tried to update that to is if you see something, say something specific, why it's suspicious, or give us the details. We need a little more than that. But that being said, we are routinely monitoring and looking for problems that might occur in the community. We go based on what happened last time quite frequently for a certain event. We've had times when one event received a lot of threats, again, via systems that we have access to and that we monitor. And the next time, there are absolutely no threats at all. So how do we respond? Do we assume, well, nothing's going to happen this time? Both of us would be in trouble if that happens. Also, though, sometimes our presence can be we create the skirmish line, right? If you have too many officers, if we don't expect a lot of activity, but we have a dozen officers down there lined up, you can almost create the problem yourself. So those are things that we try to balance and try to figure out the appropriate response to not, because we're in trouble if we over-respond, and we're in trouble if we under-respond. As far as specific incidents like that, we see incidents pretty routinely across town. I wouldn't call them one-off, but specific incidents where we have to handle it as a disorderly conduct or a criminal mischief or a theft, sometimes an assault where someone doesn't like what someone else is doing or what they're displaying, whether that's a flag or a hat, name your thing. We take proactive steps based on the threats we hear about online, but that doesn't mean we can be present all the time to make sure that two people who passed and didn't like each other's hats ended up shoving each other. Officers will respond to that, and we have written citations just based on that specific incident, but that doesn't mean we always know necessarily something's going to happen. But I will check into that and see if that's something our people are aware of for Flag Day.
Montana does have what's called Madison Montana All Threats Intelligence Center, and we are all law enforcement connect with them. And as things are occurring around the country, as things are occurring in the state of Montana, that information and those intelligence bulletins are pushed out to all of us. We can enter stuff into that as well, and that's part of what Jim's talking about with what are we looking for, what are we looking at. If there's intel that's coming out that something like that's going to occur, we are paying attention to those things. To his point, if that happened in town, they need to be calling the police. If that's happening to you, it usually doesn't happen like that. There's a build up to it. Get your camera out, start filming so that we have some evidence of who did it. Because typically by the time it happens and you call us and we arrive, most of the people are gone. Most fights, especially on the street, are going to last anywhere from 20 seconds to 25 seconds. They're over like that. And then people disperse. So if there's something like that happening, get it videoed, let us know, call immediately. Don't let it build up, walk away, whatever the case may be, but call 911, call the police. That's what we are here for. And we hear it all the time. I didn't think it was a big enough deal to call the cops or call 911. If you think it's a big deal that you call, let us determine what we're going to send. That's our job.
And there's quite often that it may seem like a small incident, an interaction between those two people. That same person might have done that multiple times down the street, and officers have been trying to catch up with them. Or it might be somebody we've been looking for because they've had a history or record of doing this. So quite often it's that little piece of that little tip or that one thing, that call that we get that ends up being able to solve a bigger problem than just whatever you witnessed.
Hi, thanks to GVS and the Central Committee for putting this on, and for you being here, being open with the community, and to everybody who showed up. We need to invite more people. My question is about urban camping. It hasn't come up yet this evening. I thought it would be the first question. What really is the status of urban camping here as far as enforcement goes? And what is the makeup of the urban campers from a crime perspective? What are you seeing and what can you do now?
That was probably for me, huh? So I'll try to make the whole story a little bit shorter. So there was some case law outside of our state that affected our ability to enforce some of the camping regulations that we had. So our city commission created an ordinance that they believe accurately reflected that. But at that point, there honestly wasn't a ton that we could do based on that ordinance and based on that case law to limit urban camping. It had to do with manner, location, time requirements on the urban campers. So the Supreme Court actually ruled this summer on a couple of those case laws, and subsequent to that, the City Commission put forth another ordinance, which they actually ultimately passed, that did allow for controlling the manner, place, time, location, those types of things for urban campers. So that's the ordinance we're under right now. So part of that goal, or part of the goal was to remove responsibility and police response, like I was talking earlier, away from the police department. So the city created a separate division, or it's not a department, but a division under a manager. They put parking, code compliance or code enforcement, and urban camping staff under that same umbrella, and they have a manager now that deals with that. So I don't have the exact numbers, the data, but at one point we were up at least to 100 campers in town, and it was very difficult to be able to move them from place to place. There was just very limited, we were very limited to what we were able to do. The ordinance now, the way it works is, again, there's certain places in town that meet the requirements under the new ordinance where urban campers may be. Additionally, it requires a monthly permit that they have to apply for. And my understanding is when this new ordinance started, generally those who had been the most poorly behaved and had not obeyed the previous rules were not given a permit under the new ordinance. And so that right there, actually, a lot of them did find another place to go. And the ones that were issued a permit were told, here's where you may stay. And they also even added in stickers. We have seen those. They had a number on them. So if they're on max, they had an M, like 136. They had a permit number on them. And that's where that was their designated spot where they were allowed to camp. Beyond that, right now, that program is slowly sunsetting. It is the city's goal to eventually sunset that. I can't speak to the exact time frame. I know there's some discussion and some different opinions on when that should occur. But there are no new permits being issued today, is my understanding. So as people find other resources, as they move into a place, as they find private property, whatever the alternative is for them, they're not issuing new permits at this point. So like I said, I want to say we're up to 160 to 200 at one point a couple of years ago. Last I heard, we're down about 40. And so that right there is a substantial change to what we had before. When they started enforcing that most recent ordinance, the Neighborhood Services is the division that's been handling this. When they went out, they had gotten to know a lot of these people already. But they had a lot of them who said, no problem, I have property to go to, some in the city, some in the county. Some of them had other places outside the area to go to. Some of them already had some housing lined up. My understanding from these staff members was that there were a lot of different small solutions and things that people did, and a lot of different plans that people had. So today, the numbers are a lot lower. Generally, from what I've seen and heard, the sites are cleaner. That's because the Neighborhood Services group is out there continually building relationships with them, trying to get to know them. They're not just making sure they pick up their garbage and keep their site clean, which is a part of their duties, but they're also trying to find out what their story is. Are there any resources we can offer you? Can we even help change a tire, or do you need a battery to get this vehicle moving? We're trying to offer assistance, yet also have the penalties associated at the end. As far as the officer's response, they do respond to urban campers. So they typically do not go and make sure that they're abiding by the regulations of the urban camping ordinance. Officers are responding if there's a reported domestic, or if there's a medical emergency, or if there's an argument or a fight between some urban campers. That's when the officers are responding. Outside of that, if they've overstayed their month in that spot and haven't renewed their permit, that's all in the Neighborhood Services crew. I routinely also asked who are the urban campers. And as you can imagine, there are people in the community that believe they are all very hardworking folks, just trying to make ends meet, not committing any crimes, Then there's the other side who believes that they are all criminals and none of them have jobs. They're all addicted to drugs. The truth is between there. There are some urban campers that I have personally met that were very hardworking young people. I recall one that had 2 young couples in it. One of the gals was pregnant, and their husbands were both at work when we were talking to them, literally working a job during the day and a job at night to try to make ends meet and better themselves in the community. There are other campers. We have had significant cases in the campers. Our drug task force has had significant cases from drugs being distributed out of the campers, cases they've worked. And luckily some of those they've put together some pretty substantial cases and been able to prosecute them. Everything else in between, that's what we're seeing.
And I'll add that from the county's perspective, we have not had the same issues that the city has had. However, I don't believe it's anything different than when we raise kids and run our detention center. If you lay out the expected behaviors and you lay out the expectations, people will typically follow that. There's always a subset of people that will not. And we have people in our detention center that are always going to be in the high side, right? They just cannot behave themselves. And similar to what Jim was talking about, there is a subset of that culture that they are going to be committing those crimes. And we started to see an increase in those crimes right around the end of, or just before the ordinance that they put in place. We started seeing a lot of storage facilities thefts. We saw a lot of drug cases, and that was all occurring out in the county. And so our deputies were going into these urban camping areas and engaging the campers because the crime was committed out in the county, but they were living in the city. So we started to see that. But I do believe if you set the behavior expectations and you do have a consequence for that, that's why the detention center is so effective. Is they know the consequences is that they get moved back up to a higher side and they lose, some of the privileges they may have had. And I don't think it's any different than here. We are working with the commissioners currently on establishing a little more robust penalty for urban camping in the county. Currently, there's really nothing that's very set in statute. There are statutes that involve roadways and those kind of things, but we have these funky little areas inside the county that it may not apply to. And so, working with the commissioners and the county attorney at this point to work through that.
Joe Hancock, I am the current chair of the Elton County Democrats, and I just wanted to let you know that I did text you the information about that 14 June Flag Day No Kings protest that'll be downtown. And if you could share it with Chief Velkamp, you'd be able to be ready for that. It'll be noon to 1. And for sort of clear, it's not being put on by the Democrats, but you can imagine a number of my people will be there. But it's not our rally, it's other organizations.
And that's why I get my phone number out, so you can text me that. See, nice one.
Thanks you guys for being here tonight. I think events like this are super important. I don't know how many people are aware, but you can go online, look at the jail roster, see the ICE holds, see the crimes that they're being held for. See the crimes that they are being held for. I don't know if the city commission is aware of that. I think it'd be worth them checking out so they can see the kind of people they're willing to put back in our community. And on that note, I'm wondering what resources are available to you guys as law enforcement from ICE, any federal resources, things you've asked for, and are you able to make, accepting those resources, can you make that decision on your own authority, or are we at the mercy of the city commission on that?
So just to clarify, the city commission doesn't have anything to do with ICE or immigration or federal agencies. Secondarily, we as local law enforcement do not have primary jurisdiction or even authority just to make immigration related arrests. He explained it pretty good earlier in the context of investigating tax fraud. There are investigators that's what they do. We don't enforce that part of the statute, and it's the same here. So from our department, we cannot, will not, and don't ask for additional resources or staffing or increased ability to deal just with undocumented people in our community and putting holds on them or turning them over to ICE. The The way it works for us is that we cooperate with the federal agencies that do have primary authority over doing that. What that means is there have been times where they've given us a heads up, said we're coming into the community, we're looking for these 6, 8 specific people. They're people that they have clearly identified as typically being part of a gang or a cartel, as having committed crimes that they want to go pick up. They let us know, and we cooperate in that. We make sure we have communications with them, so if something happens, we can be there to assist, so that at least we're aware they're in the community, and we don't go out wondering what's happening in our own area. This happens all the time with federal agencies, right? We have the FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, Marshals. There are so many federal agencies that have a responsibility for some type of enforcement in our community, even if they're not here all the time. And we collaborate and cooperate and at least communicate with them on a regular basis. So that being said, we are not authorized, or there are no policies or laws in place that we have to help them. Flip side, there are no laws, policies, regulations that prohibit us from helping or allowing them to do their job. And I think that's the way it needs to be.
When we look at how does that look practically on the street, our guys are out there doing their traffic stops, doing their work, they're responding to crimes, they're responding to reports of whatever the case may be. If they run into someone that's being arrested and turns out to be illegal, that's the process that local law enforcement begins. And that's how ICE gets involved. Ultimately, once they're in the detention center. What we're not doing is driving around, knocking on doors, running into schools, looking for documentation cards. That's not our job. That is the job of the federal government. If that's what they're doing, that's what they do. But as far as I know, that's not happening. There's only 6 enforcement officers in the entire state of Montana, ICE enforcement officers in the state of Montana. That they don't have this huge, robust organization to do what people have in their minds is going on in some places. The other important thing is there are always going to be one-offs. There's going to be mistakes made, and I hear it routinely. Well, did you hear about this guy or this person in this town, this state, this whatever? You know, yes, those are one-offs. People are involved. Humans are going to make mistakes, and I bring it up like we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater when we have a justice system that we know there have been people that are on death row who have been found innocent after 30 years being in prison because of some kind of DNA process, okay? We can't throw out the entire justice system because of the one mistake that the justice system made. There's going to be mistakes made at the level of ICE. We can't throw out the entire concept of ICE just because of those mistakes. We have to be reasonable about it. And I think as a community, we're having this real strong headbutting thing going on, but I think as a community, we need to be a very reasonable group. And as far as what resources are available to us, DEA, FBI, ATF has a very significant function in the firearms and explosive realm. We don't enforce those crimes. They do. ICE has a role. DEA, we have people that are actually, deputized as DEA agents, or it's a long story, but anyhow, essentially DEA agents. And then the FBI has an office here. None of those other agencies have offices in Galvin County. FBI is the only one. And so there's not a whole lot of federal resources for Galvin County. We are assigned to places, usually out of Billings. Remember, when they'd established who got what services, federal courts, federal services, Bozeman was a tiny little cow town, and it was just a blip on the map. It was Butte, Missoula, Billings, Great Falls, and Helena that got all of those resources. Bozeman, you could drive from Billings to Butte, and you'd see one sign that said Butte, 120 miles. You never saw a sign that said Bozeman, 60 miles. They've just changed it here in the last 10 years, I think, or 8 years. So the fact of the matter is that's why we don't have the federal resources that you see in other places, even though we're the fastest growing community in Montana. Well, this year, I guess Council will get us point something.
Chief, Sheriff, thank you for being here. We all appreciate the community and the communication. Question, other than one-offs for both of you, what keeps you up at night? What are you most concerned about growth and problems. What keeps you up at night?
Well, we put some of the most incredible young people out on the street in the middle of the night to make decisions in horrible conditions, bad weather, completely dark. We ask them to make decisions with limited information, oftentimes wrong information, in an extremely compressed time frame. And then all of me will sit back 5 days later, or 5 years later, and they should have. They made that decision in a matter of seconds in the middle of the night in a compressed time frame. My job is to make sure that they have the equipment, they have the tools, they have the training, they had the opportunities, they had the partners, they had enough bodies, they had all this stuff that they need to make sure that they did that correctly that night. And what keeps me up is knowing that someday that's not going to be enough. I've had one officer killed in line of duty in my, well, that's not true. I've had 5 killed in line of duty, 1 from my agency here, 2 from my agency prior, and 1 in West Yellowstone, that's not with our agency when I was here, and then 1 from the Highway Patrol, went out a few years ago, it's been a lot of years ago now, and then 1 from Broadwater County, who we all knew well because he was from this area originally. That's just here, right? And that's just my little 28 years of experience, so that's whatever, I didn't even count 6, 7. I know I'm going to get that phone call again. That one of our deputies got into a shooting, they either killed somebody or they were injured themselves. That's what keeps me up at night. Did we give them enough to make sure they do it well?
I couldn't agree more. That is exactly what concerns me the most. There are times, obviously, when I hear a SWAT call is going on, if it's in the city, one of us, from command staff, or 2 or 3 of us are usually there, but it's wanting to know that all the officers are okay. So even when we have a shooting, as terrible as they are, that's of course my very, very first thought is, are the officers okay? Are they all right? That's the biggest concern. And then of course, we what happened, find out the circumstances surrounding it. But I agree, there's the one thing that each morning I wake up and okay, I don't have a text or email or anything that one of our guys got hurt. That's absolutely, somehow there's a different responsibility. When I was out there, when we were out there, even when we were in the drug task force doing some pretty crazy, scary stuff, I knew I was okay, right? My wife didn't always know if I was okay. I did. But now, when you're in these roles, there's a different feeling when you put a 22-year-old out there who you believe is a very smart person and they're out handling very dangerous situations, just wanting them to be safe. And they do an incredible job. I really got to say that. They are put in the toughest situations, split-second decisions that attorneys will review for decades sometimes. And the community will look at, and everybody will have their own theory, and they make these split decisions, and they move on to the next one. The frustrating part is, again, the one-offs. When somebody makes a poor decision, that's what makes the news. So often there are hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of good decisions that every single one of them made that you never hear about. That being said, during the day when I'm awake, the things that would concern me the most would be, are we meeting the community's expectations? Are we keeping up with growth? What is the city going to look like in 10, 15 years? When I'm long gone, are we setting the department up for where we should be to serve this community in the future? Do we have the right training? There's so many of those things that keep me up, but yes, the officer safety is definitely the number one.
Lots of back pain from gun belts for years keeps me up too. I'm looking in the back of the room, there's Elizabeth. She is 6 months on the sheriff's office. She interned with us, she's graduated MSU, she's an incredibly brilliant person, is going to be an incredible deputy. The fact that I know who that person is and what she is and who she is, and that there's someone out there because of the uniform she wears is interested in taking her life, that bothers me. And that's why when we know that they go out every night with those decisions, and I know I've met her parents, I've met her family members, and there's a responsibility and a burden that you feel as a boss when you come into these jobs that says, no, it's my responsibility to make sure that she's okay, and you have those conversations with her parents. So it's not fair that because of that uniform that she wears, someone wants to take her life, but we're not going to allow that to happen. Right, Elizabeth? All right, very good. And she'll be off FTO next week, right? Congratulations.
So we're gonna take, sorry to interrupt you. One more question from the public and then go into the questions that came in from people that emailed us their questions. And hopefully I'm not duplicating them. Go ahead.
Well, this may seem picayune, but I think it's not. I urge the chief to not use the word undocumented. It's a euphemism that's intended, definitely intended to cover up the serious law breaking that's involved. It's to make it sound like it's just a paperwork snafu. And many of them have, in fact, bounteous fraudulent documents. The technical term, which you will find in the U.S. Code, is illegal alien. You will find that there. You won't find undocumented. And clear language is, I think, important for clear thinking. So I'm hoping you will change on that. And then just a quick question for Sheriff Springer. The sheriff's office, I think, is participating in the 287G program, and I just wanted, is that correct?
That is correct, and there's two pieces to that, and we're involved in the warrant portion of that. So I have a detention officer who can serve the detainer warrant, and essentially that's all they do. And so, what that is when there's a warrant with ICE, then I have one detention officer that's able to actually serve that. That way ICE doesn't have to drive down there, serve it, drive home, come back 48 hours, pick them up, go away. It seems to make sense.
Okay, so we're gonna go to our list here. Hopefully, I think you guys have covered a lot. We've organized it all, so I'm not gonna ask you the same question twice. First up, are either of your departments participating in meetings like this with other nonprofits who are working with immigrants, both legal or illegal, that are not open to the public or media?
I mean, I talk to groups all the time. So does the chief. You know, what's the name of the Bienvenidos? You know, we are on Zoom calls with them quite a bit through our Youth and Family Outreach Program. We've been working on kind of a local ad campaign. One of the concerns that we find is people that, and I'm going to talk about the legal ones that are here. And again, my brother-in-law, he owns a landscape company. He has 10 employees that are here legally. From this time they're from Mexico. They've been from Honduras and Guatemala in the past. Goes through the whole process. There's $30,000 in attorney fees, etc. But they're here for typically a couple of years. They don't understand a lot of our laws. They don't understand what do you do when someone pulls you over, when the law enforcement pulls you over. What is a DUI? If you think about the years and years and years that we have communicated and educated our generation of people on why a DUI is bad, and that hasn't happened in a lot of their communities and a lot of their countries. It's taken Montana, who is on the low end of understanding what DUIs are and looking at their statutes and everything else, and we're usually on the high side of DUIs nationally, right? We still haven't learned. And we have the advantage of years of education behind us. So it's our job to try to do some of that education. And why? It's not because they don't speak English, and it's all of that stuff. It's because it's a public safety issue. I don't want them on our roads when my children are driving. I don't want them on the roads when your children are driving or when you're driving. So it's important that they understand what that means in our country and in our community. And I'm talking about the legal ones. The illegal pieces of that's a whole other separate issue. On the same side, I want them educated too. If they get caught and sent back to their country and all those things, great. However, until then, I don't want them driving on our roads drunk either. And so we need to continue to educate. And we have a responsibility to do that. We've been working in conjunction with some of these nonprofit groups to do ad campaigns in both English and Spanish so that we can continue with this education process. So yes, there's plenty of other, I can't even tell you how many groups I talk to. And usually the media doesn't care. They don't. And so I'm not really sure what that all hoopla was about. I appreciate, the fact that we are all here, and I think my understanding is that it's being sent out to the public. Thank you for doing that. I think transparency is absolutely key, especially in our field. So thank you for doing all that.
I'll just reiterate that yes, I speak to groups all the time, and by far, the majority of them, the media is not there. Again, I don't know if they would be excluded or invited, but It's usually social service clubs, HOAs, a wide variety of groups. Yes, we do all the time.
So I'll stay in this category, and we just need about 20 more minutes. I'm not gonna keep you here all night. No, everybody needs to get going. How are you addressing the influx of non-English speaking workers, example Amazon drivers, DoorDash, etc.? Are these individuals vetted for legal work status or driver safety concerns? How are they able to obtain driving privileges and job permits? If you know.
Because they don't speak English, it does not mean they're illegal. And I think that too often, this community, I grew up in a community where a lot of people did not speak English. And they were still US citizens, or their English was not very good. So they are not allowed to have driver's licenses. They're not allowed to do that if they're here illegally. The fact of the matter is just because someone does not speak English does not make them illegal, and it's an extremely bigoted thing to think that way.
We do find routinely that our officers, literally on a daily basis, have to try to figure out a way to communicate with someone, specifically in Spanish. When we were on the street many, many years ago, when we were both still young and cool, it was very rare to find somebody who didn't speak English, and now it is a daily struggle. Our officers are using various apps. We have language line. We have 2 services that they call in, tell them what language they need, hand the phone over. They're texting with the person they're dealing with. I've always wondered how the much larger communities do it, where they have 20 languages spoken in their community. That has definitely become an increasingly difficult thing to do. We've had to translate citations and all of our forms, the notices that we hand out, and the statement sheets, all of that we've had to translate into Spanish. We're seeing that literally on a daily basis. But I concur with Dan's point that just because people speak Spanish does not mean they're here illegally. There are a lot of communities, especially in the southern part of the U.S. down to the border, where that is the language that's spoken, and those people were all born in the U.S. So we cannot and will not automatically assume something just based on that.
And Adam, there was a time where we had, and I'm going to use the wrong terminology, so whatever, but there was a lot of Eastern Bloc, a lot of Russian and a lot of Polish and whatnot that were working in our West Yellowstone area, in the Yellowstone Park where I was working there, and they didn't speak any English either. And they weren't illegal, they were there on visas. There's a lot of programs that people still work in our communities that are on different types of programs. So I think it's important that we recognize that. The last thing on this too is sheriffs around this country have been the one banging the drum about the southern border issues. And we have been back in DC, we have visited the borders, they've been, finally someone started listening, and I think there has been a significant change. You hear the numbers, what's been dropping. We see our fentanyl numbers going down. We see a lot of the crimes that are associated with the southern border. We listen to the National Sheriff's Association, we listen to all the other sheriffs down there. They have been extremely helpful in trying to get control of this. And why? It's not a political matter. I mean, I know for people it is a public safety issue again. What happened at the border created massive public safety problems in this community 2,000 miles away from that border. I recognize we're closer to the other one, but that wasn't as much of a problem. Could become more of a problem later, but right now it's not. So I think it's just recognize that it's a public safety issue. That's why we're dealing with it.
Okay. So this is in our human trafficking, child safety, mental health category. What is the extent of human trafficking in Gallatin County, particularly involving women and children? And what should residents know, and how can residents help?
I would say that it happens more often than you think it would happen. I still hear routinely that kind of stuff doesn't happen here in Bozeman. I can tell you it does. So our detectives at times have put together operations. They did one maybe a year and a half ago that made news across the state. Not only that they did it, but how much success they had during a human trafficking operation. And of course, it's a win in a way when you're doing an operation like that, but obviously the goal is that you have no success. And unfortunately, they had a lot of success. We are seeing it as far as the extent or the level or how much of it is someone actually being human trafficked versus voluntary. I can tell you the cases I've seen, routinely the person being trafficked doesn't even know what city they're in, and that's happening right here. A lot of the tips that we get are hotel, front desk employees, for example, that are noticing something going on, or people coming and going. Of course, there's now a lot of different ways they go about it, right? There's an app for everything, and that's true of this too. So what I would ask from the community is if you see something, say something specific. Again, tell us exactly why it concerns you. Not just that somebody in the neighborhood doesn't fit who is normally in your neighborhood. Okay, well, what are they doing? What are you seeing? Are you seeing somebody who seems fearful? Tell us specifically what you're seeing. That's the best way that people can help, is to let us know. People, again, I think you made the point that they say, well, I didn't think it rose to that level, and then the next day I decided maybe I should make that call, and too often by that point it's too late. So if you see something, say something, but actually have come to mind and think about what details you can give that might actually allow us to take action.
Some of the things you'd be looking for, typically it's, mid-teens to mid-20s females is what you're looking for. Typically they won't have a phone. They won't have a purse. They'll almost always be a watchful eye, keeping their eye on them. If they're going in and out of the town pump into a bathroom, someone is going to be watching them. And they might be in a car, they might be in a truck, they might be somewhere around, they might even walk in with them. They're not going to be conversive. They're not going to typically buy the product. They're not going to have money, and they're going to have someone else that's doing those things for them. They're not allowed to speak. So when you see those kind of things, that's what you're looking for out there. You call us. And then we will go and we'll find out what the heck's going on. Sometimes it's just a bashful person. Sometimes it's a real deal. So call us if you see that.
Okay. And this is for law enforcement resources and public safety. Do you guys think there are enough officers and deputies to respond to calls, especially in rural areas and during emergencies? How many more are needed, and what are your recruitment challenges? Just a real quick one.
Yeah. There goes the rest of the time.
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. So the recruitment challenges, I think I kind of described that already. Difficult to find good people who want to serve for the right reason, who want to make a career out of this, who have an understanding of the needs of this community, as opposed to just they want to work somewhere. There's so many factors that go into that. Difficult to be able to live here. I can tell you I have a lot of officers by now living in Broadwater County. So when I started years ago, we all lived in the city of Bozeman or real close to the city of Bozeman. Then they went to Four Corners, Belgrade, then River Rock, then Manhattan, and now they're commuting all the way into Broadwater County just to be able to afford a house. So that's different. As far as resources, with our growing city, we absolutely need more resources just to keep up. One of the things that concerns me is having to lower the quality and the level of service as the population grows. So to me, there's a big difference. If you call our department and want to report that your car got broken into last night, that's a big deal to you. But there's a big difference between an officer showing up in 5 minutes, spending some time talking to you, showing concern, looking around the neighborhood, looking for ring doorbells at any of the other houses, versus somebody calls you back, maybe a staff member calls you back an hour and a half later and says, can I get your name, date of birth, what was taken, do you know when this happened, what's the license plate on the car? There's a completely different feeling in the sense of safety and what the message is that is sent to the citizen. And I don't want us to lose that first one and end up leaning on the second one. So that's something that concerns me. As far as the resources, we absolutely don't have enough resources for any of us to individually handle the big thing. So routinely, when something big happens, we are all there together. It doesn't matter at that point if you're Fish and Wildlife Parks, Highway Patrol, it doesn't matter what agency you are, you're gonna be there. So we have assistance from the Sheriff's Department routinely on bigger events. If something big happens in town, you will probably see a Bozeman patrol car there and a Gallatin County Sheriff's department car. We had a pursuit and crash that made the news here 3-4 weeks ago. I think it was every other car that was stacked up in that mess. We help each other. We have to. There's only so many people to go around, and we have a very good partnership with Montana State University and Belgrade, the Sheriff's Department, all the agencies to work together. So when something big happens, we can bring our resources together. I've got some resources, I've got some vehicles, I've got some tools that he doesn't have, and he has some that I don't have. So we put all our toys and all our people together.
As far as the recruitment process goes, and we are different than a lot of law enforcement agencies. We are not having a recruitment problem. We are full. We have been full. We just had a hiring process for a couple of retirees, but they're full again. So we are not having that issue. In our detention center, absolutely. That's a very different place. This is our sworn side. However, it is so important for me to have my deputies living in the community that they serve. And I believe that that is one of the issues that we've seen nationally that is a problem when people are working in a city and living outside of that city. And they are not working or not living with those they serve. And I appreciate the fact that my deputies are living in the community. It might be the dad or the mother of the child that's sitting next to their child in their elementary school that they're dealing with. You will tend to treat people with higher respect, a little better that way when you actually know them, or when there's a possibility you will know them. When we are living outside of the communities that we serve, it becomes this us versus them, and I don't have the same buy-in. With the sheriff's office, we have every deputy has a take-home vehicle. Their offices are essentially their car. If you ever look in the trunk of a sheriff's deputy, there's backpacks and throw orbs and life jackets and shovels and axes. It is absolutely ridiculous. And then you've got all the law enforcement stuff that goes on with that. And it's important that we have that because even like the double homicide we had in Three Forks, we had 35 vehicles on scene in an hour and 10 minutes. And had that whole place locked down. We had the community was safe, etc. Now we were able to release them at some point, and some of those were detective cars. But those that remember the explosion downtown Main Street, every single intersection had cars, and a lot of sheriff's cars because we have more cars. We have 120 cars in our fleet, right? And so a lot of vehicles down there, a lot of cops showing up. When I put out the information, they can respond from their homes. That's why it's important to live in these communities. If it happens on the west end, I have people that live there. If it happens on the south end, I have people that live there, and they have the equipment and the vehicle to do that. What's our biggest issue is our pay. And I'm completely honest, our commissioners have been awesome about trying to increase our pay. They've worked really, really hard at doing that. No, he is gone. So I'm not, but on the same, I am honestly being, that is the truth. This commission, for the last 5 years, has worked very hard at increasing the deputies' pay. However, there's a statutory thing that links their pay to the sheriff pay and the elected official pay, and so they can't give a deputy a raise without giving me a raise and all these other things, and there's all these statutory issues. We routinely make about, my deputies start about the same as a Bozeman city officer, but before long, they are making anywhere from 30 to 60% less than them. My command staff is making about 70 to 90% less than his command staff. And that is an exceptional amount of money. And on the same side, they want to do the job they're doing in the sheriff's office. So they're not leaving, they're staying. And part of that, I do believe, is that we have this large, broad band of services that we provide. It's the difference between, oftentimes the sheriff's office and the city. And so we hire this different personality set. Some of the personality sets that I hired would not make a very good city cop. And some of the city cops would not make a very good sheriff's deputy. And so there's kind of this larger personality set that we have. Our band is wider. And so that's part of what we see, but that is one of our biggest challenges. And there's a lot of issues and reasons for it, but the pay is an issue for all of my deputies. And obviously I don't want them living in this community if we can.
So one more in this category and then just a couple more questions. Do you guys feel pressure from city leadership or political agendas that interfere with enforcing laws? Would you follow directives from elected officials if they conflict with the law?
No.
Not my question, but a question everyone has.
Yes, our job is to enforce the law, right? Enhance public safety, enforce the law, build trust with the community, and anything that conflicts with that, absolutely not. Now the problem is the wiggle room between there, or the different interpretations, or the different thoughts or models or goals or philosophies about what the best way to go about doing something is. I think that's for us where the tough part is, but beyond that, absolutely not. If there's something in conflict with a state law, a local law, case law, that is what we have to follow. It's really that simple.
Yeah, my no is to the second portion of your question. I would say yes to the first portion of your question.
Yeah.
Of the, do politics intertwine with the work that we do? Well, obviously, and I think we've all read about it recently. So it shouldn't. The sheriff is a, I'm a party affiliated, yes, but that doesn't affect the work that we do on the public safety side. It shouldn't. And as soon as we conflate politics and opinion with public safety concerns or public safety issues, we're going to have a problem. And I really try to keep that line fairly bright. And public safety is public safety. My politics or my opinions are my opinions. And I'm not afraid to share them. Most people that know me know that. And however, it's not going to affect the public safety piece of the work we do.
Okay, here's one for immigration and education. Are public schools required to report undocumented students? What are your views on how this should be handled at the local level?
To my knowledge, but it's outside my scope. I don't believe they are. There may be someone in the crowd that would know better than I would, but it's outside my scope.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. I think we just kind of answered the budget question, so we'll just leave with this question. General crime trends. What are the most concerning crime trends in Bozeman, Belgrade, and Gallatin County today? And what are the strategies in place to address them?
I think one of the biggest I've seen is the increased drug usage. So I did learn just today, I saw some numbers about how fentanyl actually went down this past year. Methamphetamine went up. So we see this routinely where over both of our careers where we see one drug usage and the numbers that we're seeing in a local community increasing, and then that kind of decreases, but something else takes its place. The concerning part for me is the fact that, so years ago, pills was probably the worst thing, and meth. The pills, because they're mostly opiate, the painkillers, which can kill you instantly if you overdose. Meth, clearly not good for you, and was a substantial problem in our area. Then we had heroin come in, and that kind of took over and became the worst thing. Now we have fentanyl. Well, fentanyl has dipped down a little bit. Meth has gone up, but there are new drugs that are many, many times more powerful even than fentanyl that are coming in. So to me, that's the concern. People using them, not realizing another drug is laced with that, is very concerning. And these are, I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the stories on the news across the country of a truly innocent kid that is out at a gathering or a party and had no idea what he just took, and he dies immediately. That's very concerning. And I think the fact that that will increase in the community, Bozeman with the money, with where we're located, is definitely a hub for drugs, and that's one of the things that we're definitely seeing. Strategies to address it, here kind of comes the philosophy part, right? We need the enforcement, and we have a very good drug task force that we both contribute members to that works on the drug distribution level. They try to move up the chain and take out the distributor, the person bringing it in. But then what about all the users? How do we stop the next person from going to that party and accidentally taking something or purposefully taking something? So like that, I think the approach to that is multifaceted. There need to be stiff penalties. We need to have the resources and tools that we need to address the issue and try to stop the flow, reduce the flow. We also need appropriate addiction recovery centers. We need appropriate tools to be able to get people back into society and recovered. It's a varied approach, and I think that's one of the struggles we have. Is we may do good at one piece of it, but not so good at another piece.
I agree that drugs are a problem, and certainly all of that is accurate. My concern right now is the brazenness that we're seeing in the crimes. It does not, we used to be able to kind of keep that quiet and under the table, and we would see it, the cops would see it, we would deal with it. It's become more brazen in our community and across our state. And I think in order to combat that, we need to continue to work and continue to prosecute, continue to convict, continue to charge people with small crimes, and there has to be consequences to those as well. If we just wait for the large ones, we've seen it across Yellowstone County, we've seen it in Cascade County, in other locations in this state where they've run out of room in their facilities, and so they're not even arrested on misdemeanors anymore, those kind of things, and their communities start to fall apart with crime stats. Jim showed a great stat of what that looks like. We are still the lowest because of and it is because of the cops are still writing tickets for that. We're still arresting on those. Right now, we are still prosecuting those, and we are still putting them in our jails. We need to continue to do that. There has to be consequences to small actions so that they don't become bigger actions. It truly is just like raising children or whatever. We have to pay attention to the little things in order so the big things don't occur.
And I lied, I have one more, I'm so sorry. It's two-pronged, but I think it ties in well with the see something, say something approach. With regards to immigration violations of known renters, employers, and people committing crimes, is there a way for citizens to report this activity? And what is the protocol on that?
Known is an interesting word. Again,
Yeah.
how do we know? There are ICE hotlines, there are information that people can call. I don't have them off my head. You can call and report those to the ICE lines. And the statement about no is very hard because I can tell you that we don't know when we show up. And so it takes, usually a whole process to actually know something. So I think the question is a little bit false in the way it was stated. I know it's not your question, but knowing is very different than assuming or
Sure.
suspecting.
Sure.
And for us, we show up and investigate crime.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who's at the loud party. If we get a loud party call, we show up and investigate the party. If we have a domestic, we investigate the domestic or the crash or the assault, whatever it is. We take action based on the state and local laws that we enforce. Once we get them to the detention center, then they might realize that they're here illegally and that ICE needs to put a hold on them. But that is up to them. We don't have any part of that. Something from earlier I wanted to mention, he kind of pointed this out, but it came up again. If you look at the inmate roster, I've been told many times, look at how many people have ICE holds. And I would just caution, remember what he pointed out, that if somebody here legally gets arrested, they can bond out because they have not been tried yet. They have not been sentenced or found guilty. Where someone there awaiting another crime or waiting for their time in court who's here illegally can have an ICE hold and therefore is not eligible to bond out during that time. So the numbers can look a little skewed, is that a good way to say that, of the inmates in his detention center, just due to that fact.
I get a daily report from the DC, and one of the columns is ICE holds, and then the other column is ICE holds with local charges. ICE holds right now are 0, ICE holds with local charges are 17. And that was this morning's. So the 0 means there's nobody in our detention center who has bonded out and is being held in that 48-hour time frame. The 17 means that they have been charged with significant crimes that they're not capable of bonding out because the bonds are too high or whatever the case may be. And if they happen to, then they move up to the ICE hold piece in 48 hours. We've had an example are the stabbing ones down, recently downtown that were just sentenced. They're convicted and sentenced. They were in our facilities as ICE holds with local charges for I think a year and a half or whatever it was. They have now been convicted. They've been sentenced. They're going to Montana State Prison. They will go to Montana State Prison and they will serve their time, as well they should, because there is a victim in this community who was stabbed, and they need to pay their dues with the prison. When that time comes up, they will still be in ICE hold. When they get out and if they get released from the prison 20 years from now, whatever it was, now the ICE hold would take effect. So And I think that's kind of how that ICE piece works. We have 17 currently, but I don't suspect that they're planning on getting out. I don't think they can do their bonds. Recognize bond is a promise that you're going to show up for your court hearings. That's essentially all it is. And bonds are set by a judge. They're set by one, the crime. Two, by do you have a job? Do you have some kind of connection to the community? Do you have priors? Do you have a criminal history of significance? There's a whole set of things. And then that is set into the court, and whether or not they can bond out is kind of up to them.
I think we've covered a lot here tonight. What do you guys think? Yeah. Round of applause for Sheriff Springer, for your time tonight, for your answers and your ongoing commitment to public safety. And thank you again to Calvary Chapel for hosting us. We are a community, and your participation from all sides is vital to making a safer and better connected community. If anybody is interested in volunteering or learning more, you can visit us at thegvsentinel.com. You can share this event as is. I'll never watch it. I don't pick myself apart and wish I did a better job, but you can fill out the volunteer sheet and get involved in any way that you'd like, and we can all help to shape the future of our beautiful Gallatin Valley. Thank you again. Be safe getting home, and we hope to see you all in ongoing conversations down the line. Thank you.